Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game. With me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. I'm a bit thrown there, Kieran, because you did that straight face. You couldn't top your brilliant physical comedy start to this week's questions pod. It's lovely to see you, Kieran. I saw you this afternoon when we did this upcoming interview. I panicked a little bit because you had to go away on a call and the interview finished while you were away, and no one's ever taught me what to do. I've not been allowed the keys to the technology of how to start a Zencaster recording or how indeed to end one. But it's a really interesting interview, this, Kieran, with what I can only call a thrusting young entrepreneur, Harry Hugo, owner and chairman of Farnham Town Football Club, who made a lot of money and could have spent it on a Ferrari, but instead decided to buy Farnham Town. And we start in a state of great excitement because it had just been a draw for the FA Cup. Here's what Harry had to say. Harry, first of all, thank you for joining us. It's very exciting. It's the first time we've ever had to delay the start of an interview so someone could listen to the FA Cup draw live on TalkSport. Fourth qualifying round of the FA Cup. It's as far as Farnham Town have ever got. Who did you get?
We've got Sutton United at home, which is a huge draw for us, both financially. Obviously, it gets a lot of attention. There's a 2-league gap. I mean, even just saying there's a 2-league gap between the two of us is crazy, considering two years ago, I think there was a 5-league gap.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant draw for us, but it means the last hour of my life has been taken over by talking about portaloos and pop-up bars, which is far less sexy than people think about when they think about a big FA Cup draw.
Big Surrey derby, though.
It is. It's brilliant. It's
fantastic.
It's a great tie because we played Sutton once before in the Surrey Cup. I think it was a semi-final like a couple of years ago, and we beat them at their place. Obviously, they didn't play their first team, but they're a good group of fans. They're very passionate. They've kind of seen the trajectory that we're hoping to go on. So it's a nice sort of coming together of two nice Surrey teams who are playing for their place in the first round proper.
Well, I presume, though, you'd have preferred Farnborough, because I understand there's a bit of Palace Brighton type vibe between you and Farnborough. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's very difficult to have a rivalry when you're sort of growing through the leagues as fast as we have, because you don't stay with anyone for very long. So we're kind of always looking up. We've got local ties to both Farnborough and Aldershot, despite never really playing them in a competitive game, especially not since my time at Farnham. So for me, there is no true rivalries because we haven't been able to build one. I wish we had, because I'm a big fan of rivalries in football. I think they drive a lot of curiosity and a lot of interest. And as a marketing person, that's really interesting to me. But we haven't been able to forge proper ones. And actually, to be honest, the ones that we've would be quite nice rivalries, like Dorking and stuff, we're actually very friendly with. So it kind of goes the other way, to be honest.
But I understand there's a kind of noisy neighbour vibe that you get from Farnborough. They're a bit worried about this upstart team down the road moving on.
I think everybody in our vicinity, sits on one side of the fence or the other. They're even very excited about the fact that there's another player in the area, and I think it's great for Surrey non-league football. And then the other side of it is obviously when you start worrying about your own patch. And we've not competed with Aldershot and Farnborough for 100 years, really, in terms of player pool and things like that, even supporter pool. And now there's a genuine question for players and for supporters. Do they go to Farnham or do they go to one of these other teams? And as a Farnham representative, that's a brilliant position to be in. If I was an Aldershot board member or a Farnborough board member, or other teams around the local area, that would piss me off. So I can understand why they're in the position they're in.
Before we talk about that remarkable recent rise of Farnham Town, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to own a football club at such a young age.
So my whole background has been in marketing and social media. I started the business that I went on to go and sell, the Goat agency, when I was 20. It was an influencer agency. That means that we would pay influential people online on social media to promote brands. And we were one of the first businesses in the door of that industry, which meant that we could carve the way. And when people were spending very little money, or brands were spending very little money on that side of advertising, we were there kind of understanding what was going to be necessary for that industry to kind of really, really push through and become a pioneering part of the marketing mix, like TV did, like radio did when they were introduced. And social media has been a huge, huge part to play in the digital and general marketing mix over the course of the last 10, 15 years. So we were one of the forefront companies to do that, both in the UK, and then we took it global. And I sold the business alongside two business partners. I sold the business in 2021. Sold half of it to a private equity company called Inflection, and then we sold the entire business to a publicly listed WPP, the largest advertising holding group in the world, in 2023. And that was obviously very lucrative for me personally. I feel incredibly privileged that at 28 I never had to work again. But for me, I have a huge amount of drive and want to go and do things and kind of upset the odds in lots of ways. And I have a really, really good group of people around me who are my best friends, but have always worked for me since we were 17, 18. And we sat down and we talked about what we could do as a group and enjoy. And I'm on the record as saying that I wanted to go as a group, we're going to go and pick up this Ferrari that I wanted to go and buy in a showroom. And my best friend turned around and said, do you really need this? Like, you've got nice cars at home. Like, what enjoyment is this genuinely going to bring to your life? And I couldn't really answer the question. And that was a good enough reason for me to rethink about what we were going to do with the money. That amount was, God, I need to think about it. I think it was like 197,000, the car. And we went to the pub down the road and we talked about whether or not I was going to go and do this. And we talked about it. And then we kind of brainstormed ideas about what else we could do with that amount of money to give us more enjoyment than this car would give me. 5 minutes of enjoyment as I accelerated down the road away from the showroom. And we said, well, we've always wanted to run a football club. That's been a dream of all of ours. And we think we can do a good job. And that was it. Then we started to look at different non-league football clubs and how we could make an impact. We built this amazing spreadsheet that would analyze different clubs and rank them and tier them based on different factors, whether or not they had a decent stadium, training facility, youth side, their bar was big enough, their car park, all within a sort of radius of my house. And we drew up a short list of 3 clubs. We went to the first one. They didn't want to know, which was a shame because it was the closest club to me. It was Leatherhead, who were in the seventh tier of English football at that point, where Farnham now are. And they turned us away after 6 months of conversations, and Farnham were number 2 on the list. And I had a personal affinity with the club, having played for them when I was a kid. I grew up in Farnham. I was schooled in Farnham with state schools, throughout my education in Farnham, and it just made sense. As soon as we met the board, they were 40, 50 years younger than the board I was talking to at Leatherhead. There's no sort of difference other than they just understood it straight away, like what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. And it was a natural fit, and it's been a brilliant fit for the 3.5 years that I've been involved so far.
I would have bought Farnham just because of the kit. The claret and light blue stripe kit it's a fantastic kit. I love it. And
are you West Ham, Villa? Who do you support?
I'm a Palace fan, so we need to go back to claret and blue. It used to be our kit. But talking of the kit, a lot of our listeners will know Farnham Town because of Peter Crouch walking out on it just a couple of weeks ago, which was brilliant publicity. But how did that come about?
So Peter and I play golf together. And he called me about, when was it? Probably about 6 weeks prior, and said to me, I'm in a bit of trouble. We've had this forfeit booked with a football league club, which was Stoke, for a long time, and they've just pulled out on me, and I need someone to help short notice. We think Stoke pulled out because they didn't want it to be like humiliating and like take the piss really out of the fixture. Would you do it at Farnham? And I was like, yes, I would. No problem. It was brilliant because the way he talked to me about it is if I was doing him the biggest favour ever. And I was like, I tried to keep that up. I tried to go, I'll see what the manager thinks. I was going to just call the manager immediately and go, we're doing this. You haven't got a say in it. But to be fair, everyone at the club bought into it, the players, the manager, and obviously the fans. And it was such an epic day. And what I would say, and I've known Pete for a good few years now, but he gets a lot of credit. He's a lovely guy, but when he's in on something, he is totally in.
I know.
He was such a good sport that day, and gave time to everybody who wanted time from him. And likewise, Chris Stark and Steve Sidwell, they were all brilliant. They threw themselves into it. We broke records, and I know I've got a huge amount of time and respect for anyone who's willing to come and help local community, football. And he put us on the map that day.
Yeah, I've worked with Peter quite a lot before. I know what he's like and how much fun he could be. But on a serious note, you take the PR and the social media stuff very, very seriously, and you're very good at it. But does that help you attract partners and sponsors, having a profile that's probably higher than your league position, in fact? Yeah.
So if we were to be ranked on TikTok followers from the most followed team, Liverpool, down in in numerical order, we would be a championship team.
Wow.
If we were to be ranked on YouTube monthly views from Liverpool, ironically, again, number 1, down, we would be in the top. We'd be a playoff championship team. And therefore, we can sell sponsorship at a much higher rate than the level of football that we play. And that was always a really, really key part. And kind of when I go back to that conversation around the Leatherhead board versus the Farnham board, that was the stuff they couldn't get their head around. And maybe that's an age thing, and I'm being less disrespectful on that. I do think that's a generational thing. That we could... My whole pitch was, for the people at the ground, I want it to be the best match day experience in non-league football. For people not at the ground, I want them to feel like they're watching a Premier League team off the field. They get the insight from behind the scenes. They understand what's happening. They get the documentary. They get the fun TikTok stuff. Like they're going to absorb Farnham content as much as they could absorb Fulham and Chelsea and teams in the top flight. And that was really important for me. And I knew that if we could do that, we could start selling merchandise around the world. we could start getting people tuning into our live streams that we put on for free on YouTube for midweek games around the world. And obviously then we can attract national, international sponsors that can help us become a sustainable football club. We unfortunately have been so successful that sustainability has kind of been not parked, but it's been something that we've had to kind of keep in the back of our mind over the course of the last couple of years, because the forward trajectory is such, the momentum is such, that we're kind of paying ahead of ourselves right now. But if the club was to, I don't want to use the word stagnate, but if the club was to stay at the level we're at now, we would be a sustainable club if we stopped investing in things going forward, i.e. new stuff around the ground, new players, things like that, to kind of continue the momentum. We would be a successful step 3, tier 7 club. Whereas when I came into the club 3.5 years ago with 80 people coming through the gate and very little sponsorship money, you were a traditional step 6, step 5, so tier 9, tier 10 football club who just kind of live by the skin of their teeth on a week-to-week basis. And it's a very different situation now.
I want to bring Kieran in here quickly, because we know from our own research, Kieran, that at that level, brand partners, sponsors are very difficult to attract. But it becomes a virtuous circle, because once they're there, once you've got a head start on all the other teams, and you attract big sponsor names, and other big sponsors are then attracted to those original sponsors, aren't they?
That's right. And as Harry was saying, if you can engage with people, and how you engage with them, it doesn't really matter. But social media is a way, and sort of the setup costs are relatively low. If you can get something which people enjoy, then you get eyeballs. And if you get eyeballs and you can demonstrate those eyeballs to brands, then they are going to sign up, especially if it is off kilter, if it is slightly different. We've seen that with Wrexham. Wrexham generate more commercial income than half the clubs in the Premier League, and they were in National League. So I think Harry's approach is innovative, but if you're only getting 80 people through the turnstiles a couple of years ago, that brings in nothing. You're effectively reliant on the bar to keep the club afloat. But extending and broadening your revenue stream makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Well, in terms of getting eyeballs on the club, Harry, the fact that you had the Surrey Zidane on Love Island, I mean, that must have been...
He'll love that. The more, every time someone else calls him that, because it was a joke by one of our fans to change his Wikipedia to it, and it's now like if you type in the Surrey Zidane into Google, you've got like the Guardian talking about him. He loves it. He loves it. So you're just feeding his ego. It's horrible.
We had a player called Max Meyer at Palace a couple of seasons ago who was described as the German Messi, and it turned out it was him who'd altered his own Wikipedia page to call himself the German Messi.
No, to be fair, I would have put it past Harry to have done it himself.
Well, is he Declan Rice's body double as well? Because that's the other.
Yeah, he did some work.
That's hilarious.
He's a great character, and fair play to Harry. He dropped down the levels. He was a professional footballer for the likes of Aldershot and Wimbledon and Real Mallorca, and in the States, he's a pretty decorated non-league footballer. And he dropped down to the 9th tier of English football, bought into the project and put 2 years of hard graft in at levels below his ability to drag our club up the levels. Not just him, a group of probably about 7 or 8 lads who dropped down levels to really push us forward and bought into the project. And he deserved 8 weeks sunning himself in Mallorca and talking to girls on Love Island for doing so. But he's a great character. He's come back into the dressing room now and into the club. He is very humble. He has been in a dressing room, a football environment all his life. He needs that sort of continuity of a group of lads together, a club that knew him before the fame, and he's been excellent and a model professional since he came back in. training, again, doing all the things that Pete did, giving time to fans, photos, autographs, high fives with kids, things that matter to people that come and watch. And, he's a match winner for us as well. He's, taking away all of his stardom. His footballing ability is fantastic.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Friday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozma St. John host the incredible new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, Friday on NBC.
Now you've mentioned that concept of dropping down. When you were in the pub opposite the Ferrari showroom deciding to buy a football club instead, was it always the plan to pay wages good enough to entice players from one or two leagues above you to drop down and help you be successful?
Yeah, so the first year that we were involved, we put £0 into the playing budget, and we spent all of our money on improving infrastructure, making the bar better, adding we added a main stand, we added perimeter fencing, all of this horrible news over the course of the last week with Billy Vigor, or Viga, I think is actually his name. And we had the same. We had concrete stone walls around the pitch. It's something that's going to have to change, and we noticed that not just for the safety aspect, but just from a fan experience point of view, it's not right. We've come a long way as a footballing country to kind of invest into the grassroots there. So yeah, I changed the perimeter fencing, put scoreboard in, changed the bar, added like merch sheds, things like that. We invested all of our year one money on infrastructure and fan experience, and then it was all about building and also getting a manager in that we trusted. To kind of take us up the levels and build into the project. And then going forward from there, it was about investing in a group of players who were at least 11 and a half above where we were, so that we could take the same group through. And again, from a fan experience point of view, it meant that they could go with us the whole way. So it wouldn't just be a tossing and turning of different players constantly, a huge churn. It would be a group that our community could really buy into. And we've still got that same group. That's still the same group of 7 or 8 are competing at the top end of Tier 7 and are in the fourth qualifying round the FA Cup and have achieved so much in the last 2 years. Unbeaten year. The Invincibles, 29 points. We won the first division we won the second division by 21 points. But back-to-back promotions. We set records every single year, and that group of 7, 8, and I don't know exactly how many of them it is, but it is that sort of number. Have stuck with us throughout the whole thing and are good enough to keep on going. So it's a really exciting time to be a Farnham fan or involved in the club. And therefore, it wasn't always about the money, not hiding from the fact that we paid well, especially in the lower levels. But it was about paying forward, like I said earlier, and building something and building narrative around the right sort of players, playing the right sort of football that was exciting. We don't bomb the ball long. We play exciting football, exciting attacking, passing football, which meant that, kids and families that come and watch are excited by what we're doing. And it translates online nicely. It looks sexy. And yeah, we keep on going from there. But yeah, the plan was obviously to get promoted, but I didn't really have a concept of how much that would cost or what it would look like. But let me tell you, and all the listeners, it is more than you could ever imagine. And we're operating at the ninth to the 7th tier, and God knows, I have a huge admiration now for chairmen and investors at Football League and Premier League level, because it is a completely different financial sport. I mean, it is really quite a dedicated financial channel to plough money into.
Do you know what? I want to come back to that in a moment if I can, and the stadium, Harry. But I just want to briefly backtrack to the importance of good PR. So tell us about your decision to pay the travel costs for away fans coming to your stadium at the start of the season, because that went down incredibly well amongst other fans, didn't it?
Yeah, we had a meeting at the start of the season, and we talked about things that we'd never seen before, and why, and then get the sort of reverse engineer that to why haven't we seen those things before? Is it because there is a fundamental flaw in doing it, or is it just because no one's thought about it before? And this away travel thing was like, it just makes total sense, because the PR is like the added value, and we got excellent PR for doing it. It was our first ever step 3, so tier 7 game that the club had ever played, and we paid for a coach to go to Hungerford to pick up away fans to bring them to the game, and that cost us, I think it was like 900 quid for the return journey. We sold 35 or 40 tickets as part of that, because we brought that many people in. So that's 400 quid or whatever through the gate at £10 each. And then they bought drinks and food, to an average of another, I think we did like £15 per head that day. So maybe something in the region of another 450, £500. And there's your 900 quid, and then PR's your added value. So you break even on the cost, and then your PR, which we got, probably another 250,000 people saw that. People like it, and people start talking about Farnham in a favourable way. For me, it was like, how can we make sure that away fans talk to each other, which they do, and say, "Oh, you should really go to Farnham. It was a great day out."
Yeah. You've had 2 promotions in 2 years, as you mentioned. Massive amount of points, unbeaten run up there with Palaces. Are you ahead of schedule, or did you even have a schedule in the first place?
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule. We planned. We did a 5-year plan to get to the level we're at now, and we've achieved it in 3. And really, of those 3, 2 were trying. The first year was just about, 1, understanding the politics and the makeup of non-league football and improving the fan experience. And then it was 2 of trying, and we did it at both attempts. So we're ahead of schedule by 2 years. If we do the unthinkable and get promoted 3 on the bounce, then we're obviously hugely ahead of schedule, because there was never really a plan to get into the National South. We always said that the league we're in now, so the 7th tier, is the start of proper football. You go on proper away trips. We've travelled down to Poole already on a Tuesday night. You go to Dorchester, you go to Weymouth, Plymouth, Evesham, Yate. These are big trips, and teams come to you from across the country too, and that adds to it. Adds to the feeling of being a proper football fan and running a proper football organisation with coaches and everything that comes with that, travel logistics. And I don't know what's next, and lots of people have asked me that over the last 12 months. I've been thinking a lot about it. I don't know the answer to the question yet, other than we'll just want to keep making the most of the momentum we have. And when that momentum runs out, maybe then I can start taking stock of where we are, what we're doing, and what the strategic plan is. I think when you have momentum, a lot of strategy is thrown out the window, and you just need to be reactive rather than proactive. And we have an excellent team, people behind the scenes who are all incredibly smart and all have the same vision for what we're trying to do, which is about making it a great fan experience for cheap. And we want football to be affordable. We want football to be enjoyable, and we want something for families to be able to do on a Saturday and spend less than 20 quid. That's really important for me.
I'm really interested, Harry, in this idea that you're an incredibly successful businessman and you've made a lot of money with your business and then with selling it, yet you were still unprepared for the financial challenges of a football club, even at that level. I mean, what were the unforeseen challenges? What were the ones that really were unexpected to you then?
I don't think it's unexpected in a sort of line item point of view. I think you kind of understand exactly what the line items are going to be over the course of a season, a sort of budgetary. It's the money you need to kind of actually compete at the top end of these levels, and I think it has changed. I am definitely to blame. We have inflated the market, and not just us, but people like me who've come in the last sort of 4 or 5 years and have increased the market for the lower levels. When you get to the level we're at now, the market is kind of set. Like, lots of teams have very similar budgets. But at tier 8 and tier 9, historically, the budgets have been relatively meager. And, 1 or 2 teams have decent budget and they kind of do all right. But they haven't been able to attract team or players from the 6th and 7th tier down to play in the 8th and 9th tier unless they're right at the end of their careers. Very, very few players will drop down in their peak. I think the money that's coming into the game now at the 8th and the 9th tier means that it is never shocking for me when I see a player who should be playing in the National League playing at step 4. It's not shocking. Like, I know that some players are being paid £1,000 a week. We're not doing that, but that just is the case. There's professional level money being spent at tiers 8 and 9 in the football pyramid. That is insane, but that is the reality of the situation. We paid a lot of money. We didn't pay any player more than £500 a week. I think that is a lot of money at tier 8 and 9. And we had a budget that should and did win both leagues, but we weren't the only ones. And I think that's the change. Over the course of the last 10 years, there's been big players in these leagues, but there's only ever been one. Now there's lots. And that means that when we're going for a player, we're not the biggest fish in the pond because there's lots of people fishing now. We used to be the only people sat around the lake. Now the lake's crowded. And there's only so many fish. So the difference is enormous. And actually, financial parity is much greater at tiers 7 and 8 than there is at tiers 8 and 9.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. I love that analogy as well of the lake not having enough fish in and there's too many.
It's true. I felt when I first stepped into step 5, so tier 9, I felt like I was the only fisherman. I've just discovered this lake, and I was fishing with dynamite. I could talk to anyone, and people were moving clubs for like 40 quid extra, and it was easy. So you know, as someone who has a decent budget, I could go to someone and say, I'll pay you £160 for the guy who's already being paid 120, and we get him. Now that player is on 400 quid because 5 different clubs have gone, I will pay you £40 more, and it just keeps going up. And if that person returns the value, they score the goals or they keep the goals out, like they're worth the money for investors.
Yeah, I suppose as well, the difference is when I was a kid, if Palace were away, we'd go and see Tooting and Mitcham play or Carshalton. And there was a complete parity with all the non-league clubs. They're all, if they were part-time, they were lucky. They were mainly amateur. But the difference is now that even at your level, you can see a clear pathway through to the National League and even possibly League One, League Two.
There's teams in our league at our level which are professional football teams. They are training 4 times a week. This is also the change. The professionalization of the pyramid has penetrated far further down than it ever has been. If you were a professional footballer 10 years ago, you played in League 2. You didn't play any lower. 5 years ago, you played in the National League and maybe a bit of the National South. Now you can be a professional footballer and play in the 7th tier our league now, and there are boys earning enough money at the level below us to be professional footballers. That is insane in such a short amount of time, but proves that the professionalization of the game is going at super speed. And I think the likes of Wrexham have attracted lots of different people to invest in football clubs because it has shown that for the first time ever, because of media, because of social media, you can actually build a sustainable football club. You just have to do it in a different way. Before it was a money pit, and for clarity, it still very much is for a bit. But you can build a sustainable model if you invest in the right things and do the right things.
You've kind of hinted at the answer to this question, Harry, because you've spent money on the stadium already. If you continue on this upward trajectory, you're going to have to either double the size of the stadium or move somewhere else, essentially, or build a new one. So I'd be interested to hear what your plans are for that, and I'd be interested to hear whether you plan to continue financing this growth yourself, or will you look for outside investment now to come in and help you with infrastructure?
Two good questions. First question on the stadium. I'm very passionate about keeping our ground in the position it's in. We are one of very few town centre football clubs that people can park or walk from their house to go to the football club. I'm really, and as someone who grew up and went to school in that town, it gives me huge pride to see the amount of people that walk into our ground from the town, which also means that we have a more successful bar than the average non-league football team because less people drive. We also drive a huge amount of revenue into the high street at local restaurants, at local pubs, which is brilliant. And therefore, we are very well supported by the council to do amazing things. Last year, or this summer just gone, when we won Step 4, became back-to-back promotion champions, the council closed the main high street of our town for an open-top bus parade for our club. That doesn't happen to clubs who don't support the town. We support the town in the way of foot traffic to the ground, drives pubs and restaurants more revenue. So that's really important for me. In a dying, that with the high streets dying around the country, if we can help support the high street, that's fantastic. From an outside investment point of view, or actually on the stadium, yes, we'll need to increase capacity. We have the ability to do it. We have a very tight plot, but it's possible. And again, the council are very, very supportive, and we have a great relationship with them and have worked with them extensively over the last few years to continue to develop in the areas that we need to do it step by step to continue to grade at the levels of football that we play at, both for the men's, but also now for the women's team as they continue to go up the pyramid as well. From an outside investment point of view, it's a very hot topic. Like I said, I'm in a fortunate position where I can do what I'm doing. My wife would rather I didn't. Less so financially, more so from a sort of brain point of view and presence. But she also knows and respects how much I love it. There is a huge interest for me in America. And with the World Cup being hosted in America in the summer, there is going to be even more of a spotlight on football, soccer, and how American investment can get into it. I think American money loves stories, and it loves Britain. Farnham is the most British town you could possibly think of. Market town, old money, beautiful Tudor houses, Georgian houses all mixed together. And we are an amazing story of success, and we exemplify the pyramid that America doesn't have. We've got 2 promotions back to back. Maybe we'll be in a contention to do it again at the end of this season, which would be ridiculous. And if we won the league this year, which I'm not saying we're going to do, but if we did, we'd be one of, if not the first team in history to have done these 3 tiers as champions back to back to back, ever. which would be amazing. We also now hold the British record for the most wins from the start of the season, 26. So we've done some cool things. And I think that story will really resonate in the States, especially after a World Cup where I pray that the national team does very well. So maybe there's an opportunity after the World Cup. I think that will depend on whether or not we have achieved what we wanted to achieve this year. But football in this country is very investable right now. And if you were to be a private equity company or an investor looking at the English football pyramid, you would find Farnham on a very short list of investable clubs. I'm not saying we're looking for it. We're not. I'm very fortunate to be able to finance our growth. But with the right partners going forward, the internationalization of football is very interesting, and non-league is a very interesting place right now, with old school clubs struggling, dropping out the Football League. We're seeing so many old school institutional clubs struggle and lots of amazing clubs go the other way. So there is a changing of the guard a bit, and I'd love to be a part of that.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original. Which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Your women's team is relatively new. I think you only founded it last year or the year before.
Yeah.
Was that a business decision, or was that the right thing to do?
It was a total business decision, and I'll explain why. At some stage, it becomes unjustifiable how much money you can spend on the men's side of football, where you're just once the momentum runs out, you can't go any further without spending silly money. And you know, at levels not far off where we are now, you might spend silly money and not get results. The women's side of things is still very much in its infancy, not just at Farnham, but also across the pyramid. Outside of the WSL, the women's pyramid is pretty basic, and is still kind of figuring itself out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the WSL is either 12 or 14 teams. Can't remember exactly how many. I think it's 12. And that will obviously increase as the years go by to a structure far more akin to the Premier League. Likewise, the Women's Championship, the WSL 2, I imagine will also go to a 18, 20 team league at some stage. At the moment, let's say that's also at 12 teams. Maybe it could be 10. So all these things are going to have to shake out at some stage. So my business side of things is like, okay, well, we need to invest now whilst it's still cheap to get promoted up the women's pyramid so that we're in contention. So when these leagues amalgamate together and become bigger leagues, we could find ourselves from going from tier 5 to tier 3 just out of default. And then you're the equivalent of a football league team in the women's side, and we might pull more people through the gate for our women's games than our men's games. You know, we will be a higher ranked women's team within 2 seasons than our men's team probably will ever be. So not just that, prize money for women's FA Cup is the same, pretty much like for like, round for round, as the men's. So you only need to win a couple of games in the women's because they've got far less teams in the overall structure to go pound for pound on prize money as the men. So that's a huge thing, because we can almost finance our women's team solely on prize money. So you can invest heavily in women's team over the course of the first 3 or 4 months to get a good run in the FA Cup. Get to last season, our first ever season, we got to the first round proper of the FA Cup. Even if 0 people came through the gate, we'd have covered the entire season of our women's investment in the first 2.5 months of our women's team being formed. Just on prize money, they earned more prize money than the men did last year, who played in both the FA Trophy and the FA Cup, and did okay. So the women's side of things is actually very commercial. There's also some really disappointing things in the women's setup right now. One, if you start a football club in the women's side, you have to go to the bottom of the pyramid, which I understand, but it means that you just end up basically having non-sporting events every week, which is no good for the women's game. It's no good for 14, 20-0 scorelines every week. It's just not good. It's going to put people off, not put people on. So there needs to be an equalization of understanding where teams should be going into the pyramid. But I respect the pyramid and understand why it has to happen. The other part is you actually, if you win tier 7, which is the bottom tier, you have to apply to get promoted. It's not a demo. You don't just get promoted if you win. So you actually get promoted on paperwork. There's a good chance that 2nd and 3rd would get promoted over 1st, purely on application form alone. And then the last thing is you cannot contract female footballers underneath the 4th tier of women's football. Why? I have no idea. There is no reason for it. In men's football, you can contract a player as low as you possibly want. In women's football, you have to be in the top 4 divisions in order to have a contracted footballer, which again is just terrible for lower league women's football, because as Farnham Town, we have 2 or 3 incredibly talented young girls, and we've given them a huge amount of game time, a huge amount of experience, and a huge amount of exposure. But we will get 0 side of the upside if any team just want them, they can pick them up next week. And that is a huge failing on the women's system. They're giving no incentive to clubs like Farnham, who are growing the women's game deeper than the likes of the WSL and the WSL2 teams, who have, let's be honest, been there mostly because they're big clubs in the men's game. And I think that's wrong. And I would love to see women's football become more akin to the men's setup, the men's pyramid, over the course of the next 5 years. And it will get there. But yes, to answer your question directly, it was a total business decision. We don't do anything just because we feel like we have to. It is absolutely either a business decision or a marketing decision for the commercial gain of the club in the long term. The long-term vision of the women's is that it will be a more successful arm of the football club than the men's.
Well, I suppose that's a really good reflection on women's football, that you make that decision purely on a long-term business.
The quality of women's non-league football, player for player, is astoundingly good.
Wow.
The technical level of these girls, especially the younger girls, and when you watch women's football at our level, there is a very clear skill gap between girls under the age of 24 and over the age of 24. That I'd call it like the Lionesses skill gap. The Lionesses' inspiration over the course of the last 8 years has been enormous to the upskilling of under 24-year-old girls. And the 16 to 20-year-old girls right now are technically way better than 16 to 18-year-old boys. They're not as physical, obviously. The game is very, very different. But the technical ball ability of some of these girls under the age of 20 is astoundingly good. Ball rolls, Cruyff turns, step overs. They've got everything. They can do it all. Physicality is not there. That part of the game will obviously improve. But I, having never watched anything outside of Lioness football, I was very, very impressed with the technical level of the girls playing in the 6th and 7th tier of English football when I watched it for the first time. And having watched it a lot now over the course of 2 seasons, the high, in fact, I'll go as far as saying the highlight of last season, despite the men winning the league by 21 points, the best game I watched last season was the Surrey Cup final between Farnham women and Brentford women, and we lost on penalties in a 3-3 game. The quality was phenomenal. It was just a brilliant game of football.
Wow. Listen, Harry, I know you want to get back to your phone calls about the FA Cup draw.
This is a beautiful distraction for me.
Yeah, great. But I've just got two more questions for you. The last one's rather an obvious one, I'm afraid. But before that, I've got a couple of mates who are Palace fans, season ticket holders, go to as many away games as possible, but they live in your neck of the woods, and they go to Farnham whenever they can, and they and their kids. One of them, his boy's playing with one of your level, your youth team, and the word they use about going to see Farnham is fun. They use the word fun all the time. So I want to ask you whether you're having fun.
Great question. Yes, I am having a huge amount of fun. I love it. Everything I've ever done, I've thrown my heart and soul into. I absolutely live and breathe everything I want to do, and I throw everything into it. And I have thrown everything into Farnham over the course of the last 3 years, and I've enjoyed every single moment. This year is the most rewarding year yet. We have broken records, of course, throughout the last couple of years, but this year, football feels real. There's jeopardy. There's reasons where we might lose every single game. The attendances are greater than ever before. Kids continue to pour into the gates wearing Farnham shirts. Away fans come because they've heard about us and want to see what it's all about. And we're just creating memories for not just me, but I see kids around the ground who will remember some of the stuff that happens in that ground for a long, long time. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of you as well, Kevin, that we remember the first time we watched football in a football stadium, and you remember those moments for the rest of your life. And I am incredibly proud and privileged to understand that there is a generation of Farnham kids who will remember their first football game as a Farnham Town game. And I'm hoping that when they're 35, they'll watch Farnham Town, the Football League. That would be incredible to say that they watched Farnham Town versus Shearwater in a leisure centre, and now they're watching Farnham Town versus, Sutton United. How cool is that? The difference is enormous. And that gives me a huge amount of pride. We are redefining football legacy in the area. And I always said I wanted to change Farnham from being a rugby town to being a football town. Johnny Wilkinson was a Farnham Town rugby player, and when he kicked the drop goal in 2003 for the World Cup, it changed the entire town to being a rugby town. I grew up in that era. I'm 30 years old. That was my childhood. That kick defined my school. And the whole town changed to being a rugby town. 350 people to 450 people go to watch the rugby club every single week, and they've done a great job off the back of that. When I came into Farnham, 100 people went to go and watch the football club. Now over 900 people on average come and watch the football club. Farnham is now officially a football town, and it's taken 3 years of hard work and amazing people behind the scenes to make it happen. But that was always the goal, and now it's about changing a legacy for kids in the town to be proud to have a football club that represents them.
Do you know what, Harry? I'm not going to bother asking the last question because it was the usual dull, how long can this journey last? But that was such a positive, upbeat answer to that question. I'm going to end the pod there because that's the whole just changing a rugby town into a football town is a brilliant. It's a fantastic.
Yeah, no shade on rugby because
of course not. But I understand what you're saying exactly.
It's so important, and I think also there's other parts of that rugby story which are the opposite of what I want to do. The rugby club had to move out of town because it grew too big, and it lost its charm. It stopped being able to grow because it was now out of town. It's so important that we keep things on the high street where we can. Community assets are so important. Driving families to cheap alternatives to great fun days out, like your friend said, so important. In a world with so much negativity, football brings so much positivity and togetherness. And it also brings negativity, it has bad stories as well. And, there's been plenty of those over the course of the last couple of weeks. But community football has a huge part to play in this country. And I'm incredibly proud to be leading one of the best community-run football clubs in the country right now.
Oh, it was a fascinating. I felt my age at some stages during that because of his energy and his enthusiasm, and the way he spoke about Leatherhead's board being too old to get it, so they moved on to Farnham Town, which is his hometown club. He was unusually honest, Kieran. I did say this to him afterwards, because normally when we speak to owners of football clubs, they kind of play down the business side of it. They say, no, I'm here to I'm a custodian of this great club. I'm a custodian of its traditions. I want to hand it. But he's very open and honest about the fact he wants to use business methods to make money out of Farnham Town, which in turn will make Farnham Town a really good team and give the people of Farnham success and happiness.
Yes, I think the kids are all right, aren't they?
Yeah. I almost felt, I think if there's a war, we're not going to win it. But we've got a generation of youngsters who can make money out of football, so things are improving. There are three things in particular, Kieran. He mentioned, we talked about the Surrey Zidane, who was on Love Island, who happens to be a very good footballer, and he said that he lured him down from 2 levels higher with decent money, and was again very open and honest about the fact that's their recruitment plan. They get players that are 2 divisions better than that league by offering them a bit more money, perhaps, than they would get even 2 divisions higher. But he said he thought they'd be the only team doing that. And he said, we're not. And he predicted that within 5 years, possibly that whole league would be professional, which was an interesting one. But it seems to be a decent business model, that idea. If we want better players, we need to pay better wages, essentially.
Yes, it worked for Wrexham. It worked for Stockport County. It worked for Notts County. If you go up a few divisions, so why can't it work at this level? As far as Farnham are concerned, it certainly, given their record to date, has proven to be successful. I think it also reflects the fact that, unlike rugby and some other sports, there is a huge number of successful, ambitious people who want to buy into football. Yes, part of it is an ego thing, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You've proven yourself to be successful. You want to see whether you can replicate that success and bring new ideas to football as well. And perhaps we are a couple of old fogies, and this TikTok stuff. I still haven't worked out how to even download the app, let alone what it does. But it does deliver, because you do hear people talking about it, and the fact that there's a big deal now going through to buy TikTok in the United States is indicative of it is taken very seriously. And ultimately, it's a form of broadcasting. Broadcasting equals engagement. Engagement equals eyeballs, and eyeballs equals money. So having somebody with Harry's background and experience, I think, is really beneficial. And that gives them the ability to buy into players. And again, that helps give the story, give that narrative. And on the back of that, you get this sort of virtuous circle leading to ongoing success.
Well, the virtuous circle thing's interesting, Kieran, because for all that he wants to use business methods, new business methods, especially social media and PR stuff, he still talked about the symbiosis between the club and the community, and how he was really proud that even somewhere like Farnham, the high street was suffering, and now the pubs, restaurants, shops, sweet shops are all thriving again, because the football club is driving footfall to those places, and in return, those clubs have got Farnham Town posters up there supporting the team, and again, it's another virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yes, it's a ripple effect of you have a lightning rod in the town, and that can so often be the football club, or to be a theatre, or whatever that's going to be. That gets a good reputation, that drives traffic, but people want an experience. They want a day out rather than just 90 minutes, and therefore they're going to go to the restaurants. And perhaps I think the initiative with subsidising the away fans, that was fantastic publicity. And what will those away fans do? They say, well, Farnham's an all right place to go. I might go there for the weekend. And it's word of mouth. Word of mouth via social media becomes very amplified very, very quickly.
Well, he actually made a profit out of that that move, getting the away fans in, because they all spent double the amount of money in the bar that the fans that wouldn't have been there would have done. I also like the fact that they identified that most of their fans were within walking distance of the ground, and therefore were only too happy to stay for a drink afterwards if they had somewhere decent to stay for a drink. So he gave them somewhere decent to stay for a drink. They're making loads of money that way. And also, finally, Kieran, when you talk about the narrative, it was very interesting when he mentioned the fact that just about every club owner in that division and below were praying that America have a good World Cup and that America go deep into the tournament. Let's hope that Donald Trump allows it to happen in America, because he says that will drive even more Americans towards English football, and that will drive them down as far as the level Farnham are at now, which I suspect is only temporary. And he said, but again, they're all looking for a narrative, and what better narrative for an American owner than quaint old English town with marketplace in the countryside, medieval churches, and a football team doing well.
Yes, special relationship. There is that viewpoint of what it's like to be in the UK. They've got a viewpoint on London, and they've got a viewpoint on the rest of the country, and neither are particularly accurate, but they can certainly be used as a sales pitch. And there are more American investors than there are football clubs. So anything which amplifies the interest in the game and the success that we've already seen from some American owners, and FSG have done spectacularly well at Liverpool. Regardless of the football, the Glazers financially have done fantastically well at Manchester United. We've got Wrexham, we've got all of these other clubs as well. We've got Arsenal, towards the top of the Premier League as well. They're only one place ahead of Crystal Palace. They're just nicking one ahead of you, which
just furious when that happened.
I know.
That's how times have changed, Kieran. Furious that we got knocked down to third. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get access to our full back catalogue, ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and much more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube. We'll be back on Tuesday with our regular questions pod. I hope you have a lovely weekend of football. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.